Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you the next episode of Hoai Ca's story. In the previous episode, Hoai Ca suddenly showed unusual symptoms, nausea, fatigue, and a missed period for many days. Hùng immediately rushed her to the hospital in the middle of a heavy storm, while Tony, the little boy who's just learning to speak, stayed home under Grandma Ho's care. At the hospital, the two held their breath as a tiny flickering heartbeat appeared on the ultrasound screen. The doctor confirmed Hoai Ca was more than 6 weeks pregnant, the baby's heartbeat was strong, and her health was stable. But before the joy could fully settle, Hung's mother, the person who once nearly caused Hoai Ca to lose her life, suddenly showed up, asking to meet and apologize. Hoai Ca panicked so badly that she fainted on the spot. Hùng had no choice but to drive his mother away to protect his wife and their baby. That night, Hoai Ca suffered intense abdominal pain and was rushed into emergency care. The doctor warned, another emotional shock, and the baby could be in real danger. The previous episode ended with the heartbreaking image of Hung's mother crying alone under the rain, while Hùng stood firm and said, "From today on, don't come near my wife again." Stay tuned for today's video to see what happens next. The next morning, the first light of day slipped through the thin curtains, scattering soft golden streaks across the tiled floor and the edge of the hospital bed. The room was silent, broken only by the steady beep, beep of the heart monitor, a quiet reminder that everything was still okay, that the tiny life inside Hoai Ca was still holding on. Hoai Ca blinked slowly. Her eyelids felt heavy as stone, yet the warmth from the hand holding hers gently pulled her back to consciousness. When she turned her head, the first thing she saw was Hùng. He had sat there the entire night, back against the wall, head resting near the edge of the mattress, his hand placed close to hers as if ready to react the moment she moved. The dark circles under his eyes and the exhaustion etched into his face said enough. He hadn't slept a single minute, not with the fear and worry shadowing him all night. Hoai Ca reached out, brushing her fingers lightly through his hair, a touch so gentle, as if afraid of waking him, yet afraid of letting him suffer alone. Hùng jolted awake. Just 1 second, but when he saw she was conscious, his eyes immediately welled up. "Ca, you're awake? Does anything hurt? Are you uncomfortable anywhere?" His voice trembled, cracked, the voice of a man who had spent the night standing at the edge of a cliff, only now pulling his wife back to safety. He grabbed her hand quickly, his own still cold from tension. Hoai Ca shook her head softly, her voice weak but tender. "No, I'm okay now. I feel much better. Because of you." Hùng lowered his head. He tried to hide the exhaustion in his eyes and the guilt pressing heavily on his chest. "I'm sorry for making you go through that. It's all because of my mother." Immediately, Hoai Ca placed her fingers gently on his lips, silently telling him not to continue. "Don't say that. Yesterday. I know you don't even want to bring it up. You're afraid I'll worry, afraid it'll affect the baby." Hùng fell silent. Not because he didn't want to talk, but because the events of yesterday were too heavy, too frightening to revisit. The fear inside him was so strong that even thinking about that woman made him worry Hoai Ca might panic again, faint again, cry in terror again. Hoai Ca looked straight into his eyes. There was no resentment, no bitterness, only the determination of someone who had thought long and hard about her decision. "Hùng, I have to face the past. If I keep avoiding it, I'll stay scared forever. I don't want to be weak when the baby comes." Hùng squeezed her hand, a little tighter as if trying to shield her from the entire world. "But I'm trapped between filial duty and love. Losing either one is losing something precious. But what I fear most is you getting hurt." Hoai Ca smiled faintly, a sad smile, yet soft and warm. "I know, because I understand. That's why I want to say this." She placed a hand on her belly, where a tiny life was forming day by day, breathing in deeply to steady herself before speaking. "For you and for our baby, I want to try making peace with your mother." Hung's head snapped up, disbelief in his eyes. "Ca, you don't have to force yourself. My mother once." Hoai Ca gently cut him off. "I remember everything. Her voice trembled slightly, yet every word was steady. But I don't want to hate anymore. Hate is exhausting, Hung. And I'm carrying your child. Hung stared at her, lips pressed tight, throat tightening. In front of him wasn't the fragile woman who had once been hurt, but a wife choosing to heal herself and their little family. His voice was hoarse. "Ca, if my mother really changes this time, I'll consider it a miracle." Hoai Ca answered him with a warm smile, soft as the morning sunlight touching the hospital window. The next morning, the first light of day slipped through the thin curtains, scattering soft golden streaks across the tiled floor and the edge of the hospital bed. The room was silent, broken only by the steady beep, beep of the heart monitor, a quiet reminder that everything was still okay, that the tiny life inside Hoai Ca was still holding on. Hoai Ca blinked slowly. Her eyelids felt heavy as stone, yet the warmth from the hand holding hers gently pulled her back to consciousness. When she turned her head, the first thing she saw was Hung. He had sat there the entire night, back against the wall, head resting near the edge of the mattress, his hand placed close to hers as if ready to react the moment she moved. The dark circles under his eyes and the exhaustion etched into his face said enough. He hadn't slept a single minute, not with the fear and worry shadowing him all night. Hoai Ca reached out, brushing her fingers lightly through his hair, a touch so gentle, as if afraid of waking him, yet afraid of letting him suffer alone. Hung jolted awake. Just 1 second, but when he saw she was conscious, his eyes immediately welled up. "Ca, you're awake? Does anything hurt? Are you uncomfortable anywhere?" His voice trembled, cracked the voice of a man who had spent the night standing at the edge of a cliff, only now pulling his wife back to safety. He grabbed her hand quickly, his own still cold from tension. Hoai Ca shook her head softly, her voice weak but tender. "No, I'm okay now. I feel much better. Because of you." Hung lowered his head. He tried to hide the exhaustion in his eyes and the guilt pressing heavily on his chest. "I'm sorry for making you go through that. It's all because of my mother." Immediately, Hoai Ca placed her fingers gently on his lips, silently telling him not to continue. "Don't say that. Yesterday. I know you don't even want to bring it up. You're afraid I'll worry, afraid it'll affect the baby." Hung fell silent. Not because he didn't want to talk, but because the events of yesterday were too heavy, too frightening to revisit. The fear inside him was so strong that even thinking about that woman made him worry Hoai Ca might panic again, faint again, cry in terror again. Hoai Ca looked straight into his eyes. There was no resentment, no bitterness, only the determination of someone who had thought long and hard about her decision. "Hun, I have to face the past. If I keep avoiding it, I'll stay scared forever. I don't want to be weak when the baby comes." Hung squeezed her hand, a little tighter as if trying to shield her from the entire world. "But I'm trapped between filial duty and love. Losing either one is losing something precious. But what I fear most is you getting hurt." Hoai Ca smiled faintly, a sad smile, yet soft and warm. "I know, because I understand. That's why I want to say this." She placed a hand on her belly, where a tiny life was forming day by day, breathing in deeply to steady herself before speaking. "For you and for our baby, I want to try making peace with your mother." Hung's head snapped up, disbelief in his eyes. "Ca, you don't have to force yourself. My mother once." Hoai Ca gently cut him off. "I remember everything." Her voice trembled slightly, yet every word was steady. "But I don't want to hate anymore. Hate is exhausting, Hung. And I'm carrying your child." Hung stared at her, lips pressed tight, throat tightening. In front of him wasn't the fragile woman who had once been hurt, but a wife choosing to heal herself and their little family. His voice was hoarse. "Ca, if my mother really changes this time, I'll consider it a miracle." Hoai Ca answered him with a warm smile, soft as the morning sunlight touching the hospital window. That afternoon, after the final checkup and a confirmation from the doctor that her condition was stable, Hoai Ca was allowed to go home. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The late sunlight spilled across the road in front of the hospital in a soft, honey gold color. The air after the storm felt clearer than usual, carrying the scent of damp earth and the freshness of trees that had been drenched through the long night. As she stepped outside, Hoai Ca tilted her head slightly, letting the cool breeze slide through her hair. That refreshing touch made her feel lighter, as if the weight on her shoulders had finally eased after hours of tension. Her body was still tired, her steps still slow, but the feeling of going home was enough to warm her heart. Home wasn't fancy, but it was where Hùng was, where Miha was, where Tony's babbling laughter echoed, small sounds, but enough to pull her away from the dark night she had just survived. When the three arrived home, Miha had already set a simple dinner on the table. A bowl of steaming vegetable soup, a plate of pepper-scented braised fish, and a separate bowl of warm porridge just for Hoai Ca. Nothing extravagant, just gentle dishes suitable for someone who had just been discharged. They sat around the meal, and no one spoke loudly, no one laughed, but that quiet, peaceful silence was exactly what they needed. Suddenly, the sound of tiny thump, thump, noises echoed across the floor. Tony crawled out from the corner of the room, his little hands slapping the tiles awkwardly yet adorably. He lifted his body excitedly, letting out bright, eager sounds, as if announcing something very important. He crawled toward the door, then plopped down, pointing straight toward the front gate, kicking his legs repeatedly. His big round eyes widened, shining as though he had spotted something familiar, yet strange. Hùng paused mid-bite, frowning as he watched their son. Huh? Why's the kid pointing at the gate like that? His tone was surprised, but also alert, because Tony didn't usually react so strongly to a distant figure. Hoai Ca set her chopsticks down gently and turned toward where Tony was pointing. In that instant, it felt like every sound in the kitchen dimmed. Outside the gate, behind the fading light of the afternoon, a silhouette stood there, half hidden behind the gatepost, half exposed to the pale sunlight. Someone who seemed torn between stepping forward and turning back. Just one glance, and Hoai Ca knew. Her heart tightened, the sensation like touching an old scar, still remembering the pain but no longer breaking from it. Fear and old shadows flickered inside her, but this time, her hands didn't tremble. She inhaled softly, then set her bowl down. Hùng, go invite your mother in. The moment the words left her lips, Hùng froze. He jerked so suddenly the chopsticks nearly slipped from his hand. He looked at his wife with a mix of disbelief, worry, and panic. Ca, are you sure? You just got home, you're still weak. I'm afraid. But Hoai Ca shook her head, her voice soft yet steady as stone. I want to face it. This time, you're here with me. Her eyes carried sadness, but also clarity. The kind of look someone has when they know they're still afraid, but they choose to step forward instead of running. Her face was still pale, her eyes tired from a sleepless night, her frame noticeably thinner. But inside her eyes was a strength Hùng had never seen. A quiet strength. The kind born from someone who had decided to walk past an old wound. Hùng stared at her for a long time, as if silently asking, "Are you truly ready?" But he couldn't put it into words. He only knew one thing: if she had made her choice, he would stand behind her no matter what. Finally, he laid his chopsticks down, took a deep breath, and stood up. Every step he took toward the gate felt heavy, but determined. Like a man walking out to confront a piece of his own past. Hung's mother stood under the pale afternoon sunlight, the golden glow falling across a face that looked far more worn than before. Her hands clutched the hem of her shirt tightly, as if that was the only thing keeping her from trembling. The breeze stirred her clothing gently, but her fingers remained clenched until they turned white. When she saw Hùng open the gate and step outside, she immediately lowered her head, unable to meet his eyes. Her voice was hoarse. Mom just wants to see her for a moment. I know I was wrong." A simple sentence, yet it carried the weight of countless sleepless nights. Hùng sighed, his gaze shifting away because he didn't know how to face her. Inside him was a tangle of conflict. He loved his mother, but the fear of her hurting his wife again was far, far stronger. His voice was low, strained. "My wife asked me to invite you in." His mother looked up, her eyes sunken from too much crying. She froze, unable to believe what she had heard. She's willing to see me? Hung didn't answer. He simply opened the gate wider and stepped aside so she could enter. His movements weren't fast or harsh, just careful, cautious, the way someone acts after suffering a wound too deep to fully heal. She stepped into the house slowly, each step hesitant, as if she wasn't sure she deserved to walk any further. The faint smell of warm porridge lingered in the kitchen. Her eyes moved around the room, and then stopped at the dining table. Hoai Ca was sitting there. Her hand rested on her belly, not clutching, not guarding, just a gentle placement, natural yet loud enough to say to the world, "There is a life here, and I will protect it with everything I have." Her gaze toward Hung's mother was calm, controlled, though it couldn't completely hide the caution underneath. She didn't turn away, didn't avoid, but she kept a safe, emotional distance. Before anyone could speak, Hung's mother dropped to her knees in front of Hoai Ca. The sound of her knees hitting the tiled floor was loud enough to make everyone in the room flinch. "I was wrong. I hurt you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her voice shook uncontrollably, each word caught in her throat. Tears spilled onto the floor, soaking into the old tiles, as if this was the first time in her life she had ever truly bowed her head to anyone. Hoai Ca trembled slightly. Her first reaction wasn't to step back or cry, it was to control her breathing, to keep herself steady. Old fear rose slowly inside her, but she sat straight, refusing to let it overtake her again. Hung stood right behind her, close enough that he could catch her the moment she wavered. He was like a solid wall, silent but shielding her entire sky. Hoai Ca looked at the older woman, her voice soft but clear. "What happened before? I haven't forgotten. And it hurt. A lot." The words made the whole house fall completely silent. No one could deny the truth of it, not even Hung's mother. After a breath, Hoai Ca continued. "But I don't want my child to grow up in hatred." It wasn't immediate forgiveness. It was a mother's choice, a desire to create peace for the small life growing inside her. Tears poured down the older woman's cheeks again, falling so fast they formed a small stream. "I'm grateful to you. You forgive me? I regret it every day, every single day." Her voice cracked, suffocated by sobs. Hoai Ca nodded gently, partly acceptance, partly a boundary. "I accept. But please don't put Hung in the middle anymore. He suffered enough between both sides." At those words, Hung's mother broke down completely. Her crying wasn't loud, but it was heavy, painful, the kind that shakes a person to their core. "I promise. I'll treat you well. I'll never be like before. Please, let me be the baby's grandmother. Will you?" Behind her, Hung stood frozen. His throat tightened until he couldn't speak. Never in his life had he imagined seeing his mother kneel and say such words. Hoai Ca looked down at her belly, where a tiny heartbeat grew stronger every day. Then she looked at the woman kneeling before her. Her voice was gentle but firm. "If you truly mean it, then let's start over." It wasn't erasing the past. It was giving all three of them a new chance. That evening's dinner didn't have fancy dishes, didn't have anything expensive or carefully prepared. Everything was so simple that just by looking at it, anyone could tell. This was the meal of a family that had just survived a storm. A family that felt complete simply by being able to sit together again. In the center of the table was a bowl of vegetable soup, now only slightly warm, a thin layer of oil swirling gently each time the breeze drifted in through the window. Beside it was a plate of peppery braised fish, the dish Miha always made whenever someone in the house felt weak. And in front of Hoai Ca was a bowl of thin porridge, still warm, each spoonful taken slowly so she wouldn't feel nauseous. The food was humble. But from the moment the meal began, the atmosphere in the house was completely different. No more clattering chopsticks from tension. No more sighs. No more heavy, suffocating silence that everyone understood but no one dared to break. Instead, there were soft, everyday sounds, small, ordinary, but enough to warm the room piece by piece. The gentle voices of Miha and Hung's mother as they spoke to each other. "Is the porridge okay, dear? Let me get you more soup." The sound of Tony babbling happily, waving his little plastic spoon and banging it on the table tap tap tap, as if he wanted to contribute to the rare, cheerful atmosphere. And mixed within it were the quiet sniffles of Hung's mother, a woman who had spent the entire day confronting the weight of her mistakes. Sometimes she would raise her sleeve to wipe her tears, trying to hide them, but failing. Those sounds, the child's voice, the soft conversations, the muted sobs, blended strangely together. Not noisy, not overwhelming, just the sound of distances slowly closing, of hearts quietly finding their way back to each other. And because of that, the small home felt warmer than it had in a very long time. Hung sat beside Hoai Ca. He ate very slowly, not because he wasn't hungry, but because his attention kept drifting to the woman next to him. Every few minutes, he stole glances at her, checking if she was tired, if she could eat, if she was grimacing from pain. The sunset light slipped through the window, casting a soft gold glow across her face, making her look gentler and more peaceful than words could describe. Her complexion was still pale, her shoulders thinner after a night in the emergency room. But her eyes, whether looking at Tony, at Miha, or even at her mother-in-law, carried a calmness he had never seen before. The calm of someone who had walked through fear and stepped into a new doorway. Hung's throat tightened at the sight. He had never seen Hoai Ca like this. Physically weaker, yet so much stronger in spirit. He put his chopsticks down, unable to keep eating. He simply sat there, silently taking in everything. His wife, his child, Miha comforting little Tony, and his mother wiping tears in quiet regret. And then, slowly, a feeling rose inside him. Warm, gentle, light as a breath, yet deep enough to shake him. And very slowly, one thought appeared in his mind. If this were the first time, then maybe this is what it feels like. To finally have a real, whole family. Not a perfect family. Not a family untouched by pain. But a family that knows how to sit together, speak honestly, apologize, forgive, and continue forward. For Hung, that alone was more complete than anything he had ever known. That evening's dinner ended with a very strange feeling, quiet yet warm, exhausting yet comforting, fragile yet full of hope. Each person still carried their own wounds, their own worries, their own unspoken thoughts. But at the very least, today they were able to sit at the same table again. And for Hoai Ca and Hung, that alone was already a very big step forward. Tomorrow will bring more things to confront, more emotions to untangle, more challenges to overcome. But this little family has chosen to stand together. And that is what matters most. What do you think about this moment between Hoai Ca and Hung? Will the road ahead truly become gentler for them? Leave your thoughts in the comments below so I can hear how you feel. And don't forget to follow for the next episode, where many unexpected turns are waiting to unfold. See you all in the next chapter.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Mình đang làm video. Tạm biệt mọi người.